Tonight, the devastating aftermath of an earthquake in Indonesia and the desperate search for survivors. Also tonight, protesters crash Matthew Guy's day on the campaign trail. 9 years after a fatal police shooting, a Melbourne coroner finds it could have been prevented. Gas panned, the push to make gas cooking a thing of the past. And banned. Debate rages over sporting support for gay rights at the World Cup. Good evening, Mary Gearan with ABC News. A massive rescue effort is underway in Indonesia's West Java province after a powerful earthquake that killed at least 162 people. Rescuers are trying to reach survivors in the rubble in the hardest hit city of Cianjur. Many of the dead are children who were trapped when schools collapsed. The 5.6 magnitude quake triggered landslides, causing further devastation. Hundreds of people have been injured, with local hospitals unable to cope with the influx of patients. Indonesia correspondent Anne Barker reports from Cianjur.
Shocked and terrified moments after the disaster. Most of those killed were students who'd finished classes for the day but were taking extra lessons at Islamic schools when they collapsed. The quake was shallow, they're often the most destructive. This is a densely populated area in the mountainous West Java region. Thousands of homes were destroyed.
When it happened, I was at home. I got out quick. Everything was flattened. Houses had collapsed.
The injured were rushed to the main hospital on whatever transport could carry them. Some arrived on motorbikes. Ambulances couldn't navigate around roads blocked by landslides. The hospital's parking lot became an emergency triage centre. Bleeding victims were treated on the concrete ground as aftershocks rocked the area. Wards were also damaged and the hospital lost power. Even those on duty were overwhelmed.
Thousands are now homeless and desperate for somewhere to go. Many, like these people, are forced to shelter in tents next to what's left of their homes.
This area is prone to landslides with poorly built houses that collapsed easily. The race is on to find survivors, but many fear the worst.
This is where all of my family are. My uncle, my little brother. Their houses have collapsed. 6 of my relatives are still missing. 3 of them are children.
Families searched through the night.
Everything collapsed beneath me and I fell on top of this child. One of my kids is still missing.
At first light, they shouted the name of the owner of this house, believed to be trapped inside. Later, more rescuers arrived, but it was too late. All they found was a body. Anne Barker, ABC News, Cianjur.
And Anne Barker joins me now. Anne, how much hope is there of finding survivors at this point?
Well, Mary, rescue workers are still trying to reach people in many different areas. Through the night, survivors have used often their bare hands to dig through the rubble to try to free people trapped under collapsed houses. But we're not hearing of too many success stories. Earth-moving equipment and excavators are starting to arrive in Cianjur here, but the rescue has been complicated by poor communications and, of course, power cuts are widespread in this area. There have been more than 100 aftershocks, and authorities are expecting the death toll will rise further.
Anne Barker in Cianjur, thank you. And 2 strong earthquakes have also struck near the Solomon Islands. The magnitude 7 quake hit Malango at a depth of just 10 kilometres. Shortly after, there was a second quake nearby. There's no tsunami threat, but authorities have warned of unusual sea currents. Damage was reported at the Honiara Airport and the Australian High Commission. Authorities are working to confirm the safety of Australians in the region. Well, just days out from the Victorian election, the race is getting closer. A new poll has the major parties neck and neck on the primary vote. And opposition leader Matthew Guy says that shows a coalition victory is within reach. He's also accused the Premier of bringing intimidation to the state after his press conference was hijacked by union members.
Uninvited visitors in high-vis.
Hands off our jobs!
More than 20 unionists gate-crashed the opposition leader's press conference, angry over his plans to scrap the suburban rail loop project.
We don't believe in Matthew Guy. Matthew Guy is no good for construction.
We're better than this, and we're better than the intimidation and the division that Daniel Andrews has created in this state.
I really would reject those comments from the Leader of the Opposition.
While the Premier was in Morwell promising to enshrine the revived State Electricity Commission in the Constitution
And protecting the SEC from privatisation, from sell-offs.
Matthew Guy was promising to revive old plans.
That's what it should be, parkland.
For a deck over the train lines on the eastern side of Federation Square.
Well, that's Flinders Street there.
It's time to turn that wasteland into parkland.
A Resolve poll conducted for The Age shows the coalition gaining ground on the primary vote, from 14 percentage points behind Labor in September to just 7 percentage points behind in October, and now neck and neck with Labor. The poll has a margin of error of 3%.
I don't comment on polls. I never really have, so that's a consistent position.
Polls show you today it's within reach. We can be rid of this government and this Premier.
With less than 100 hours until the polls close, the fight for every vote is critical. More than 1 million people have already cast their ballot, and cutting through to the most disengaged could be the key to success. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
The Albanese government is preparing to make more changes to substantial parts of its industrial relations legislation to secure Senate crossbench support. The amendments will include addressing concerns small businesses will be dragged into expensive bargaining with employees. The Prime Minister temporarily leaving negotiations behind to see Eastern Australia's flood disaster for himself.
Touching down to see the flood devastation firsthand, Anthony Albanese in Eugowra, central western New South Wales, to hear from victims.
Not to get off on a bad foot or a wrong foot or anything like that.